Hello, Torah lovers. Welcome to Tea for Torah, the YouTube channel by and for trans Jews to reclaim our texts and our God and look good doing it. I guess I'm your host, Lexi. And please welcome to the channel, Sophie, for the first time. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here and to participate in the uplift of Leah's spirit.
We are coming to study a little bit of Ma'aser Sheni today in memory of Lea for her shloshim. Lea Andersen passed away recently, and she was, I don't even know how many, there's so much one could say about her, and I didn't even know her that well, but she was a trans woman, she was a rabbinical student, she loved Torah and learning Mishna in particular, and she was the first person to tell me what estrogen does to what HRT does.
There's a kind of lineage in who you found out about transness from.
It makes me think of how the Chazal, the rabbis, your teacher plays the role for Chazal of a parent, and that's if that's not chosen family, I don't know what is. It's the people who, what you just said, the people who teach you just in their lives and themselves and in their words what being trans can be and what it can mean are your lineage. And in some sense, every time I take HRT, I'm doing that B'Shem Leah. So let's learn a little Ma'aser Sheni in memory of Leah. In addition to the learning we're doing specifically for Leah, the learning on Tea for Torah in general is sponsored in memory of these beloved neshamas by a Patreon. If you'd like to sign up to help dedicate the learning here in memory of someone, you can head to patreon.com/Tea for Torah and get a few other perks like source sheets and stuff.
Well, I'm really looking forward to us learning from each other. And I've never really done any Mishnah learning before. And I've been learning a lot about the tithes from your learning of Demai. And I thought we could maybe take a bit of a parallel or a bit of a complementary focus. It seems appropriate to start with the verses from the Torah on which it's based. Deuteronomy 14:22-27. So you shall set aside each year a tenth part of all the yield of your sowing that is brought in from the field. You shall consume the tithes of your new grain and wine and oil, and the firstlings of your herds and flocks in the presence of your God Adonai, where Adonai will choose to establish the divine name so that you may learn to revere your God Adonai forever. Should the distance be too great for you, should you be unable to transport them, because the place where your God Adonai has chosen to establish the divine name is far from you, and because your God Adonai has blessed you, you may convert them into money. Wrap up the money and take it with you to the place that your God Adonai has chosen, and spend the money on anything you want, cattle, sheep, wine, or other intoxicant, or anything you may desire, and you shall feast there in the presence of your God Adonai and rejoice with your household. But do not neglect the family of the Levite in your community, for he has no hereditary portion as you have. So there's so much in here.
Just what's going on here. So it's speaking to people who are engaged in agriculture. Every year you take a tenth of everything you grew, all of your produce. You take a tenth of basically your income, which is in the form of food, and you bring it to Jerusalem for the 3 pilgrimage festivals, being Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. You take it there and you eat it in Jerusalem. Where we're starting from is everyone's bringing a tenth of the food they grew that year to Jerusalem 3 times a year, meaning I guess a third each time or whatever. And then there's, like you were saying, if you can't do that, then you can sell it, convert it into money, bring that money to Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem, buy whatever you want.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that there's an obligation for joy and for fulfilling, for taking what your heart desires.
I guess I would think on the specific language of buy what your soul desires.
Mm.
I would think that that's maybe just saying you sold your produce, you turned it into money. So I might think in Jerusalem, when I turn the money back into food, I have to buy like exactly the same thing that I sold.
Right.
The Torah is coming to say, no, you can buy whatever you want. What you're drawing out from me in it is that it's deeper than that. It's not just like, yeah, you can buy whatever you want. You're not restricted in the kinds of food you're purchasing. It's actually like, it's dafka, like you have to buy what you want. Like, as in like you have an obligation to like be tuned in to what your soul is asking you for. And you have to use this money that is actually sanctified, like it's hekdesh.
When you redeem Ma'aser Sheni produce, so when you separate it and you redeem it for the money, the sanctity of it is transferred to the money, and then the sanctity of the money is transferred to whatever you buy with it. This is maybe not a bad time to look at the Mishna, because I think that, so from the 4th parak, 7th Mishnah. So if one redeemed Ma'aser Sheni but did not call it by its name, Rabbi Yosef says it's sufficient. Again, the context is you've grown some produce, you need to take it to Jerusalem. It would be unwieldy and cumbersome to do that with the actual produce. So you redeem it for money in the place where you grew it, and you bring the money, and then you're going to redeem that for food or whatever you want in Jerusalem. So Rabbi Yosef says it's sufficient to just do that, and you don't have to call it by its name. Rabbi Yehuda says no, he must name it explicitly. If a man was speaking to a woman concerning her divorce, her get or betrothal, and he gave her a get or betrothal money but didn't state explicitly what he was doing, Rabbi Yosef says it's sufficient, but Rabbi Yehuda says he must say it explicitly. And it's really interesting, I think, that they connect this here. Why is it that Ma'aser Sheni redemption, is being compared to, or the rules are being justified using the rules for Gittin?
And just to throw on a question, I'm like, what is it, and which is related, I'm like, what does it mean to call something by name? Like, what is the act of saying its name doing that Rabbi Yehuda is seeing as significant, that Rabbi Yossi is saying it's not significant? Well, maybe we should get into it a little bit, because I'm just looking at some commentary that I have up from Ovadia Bartenura. And he explains that, like, in this case of if you're talking to your wife about divorce or marriage, and you like give her a divorce document, or you give her like some kind of kiddushin object, but don't say it explicitly, Rabbi Yossi says that's valid. And Rabbi Ovadia Bartenura explains, Rabbi Yossi thinks it's enough because they were already talking about the subject of divorce. So when you're already talking about the subject of divorce, and then you give your wife a piece of paper that says I'm divorcing you, normally you would have to say I'm divorcing you or I'm marrying you. But since you're already talking about it, it's enough to like give the document in the context of this of the topic that the document is referencing.
That's interesting. So what would that mean? What might that mean, given sort of in the case of Ma'aser Sheni? Like,
I mean, maybe Rabbi Yossi is kind of holding like, this is money that you wrapped up and set aside for Ma'aser Sheni, and now you're in Jerusalem and it's Sukkot, and you're using that money to buy pumpkins. Just read the room. You're using your Ma'aser Sheni money to buy produce on Sukkot for eating tonight. That's enough to count as Ma'aser Sheni. You don't need to say anything. Your words are speaking, your like actions and the context is speaking for you.
That's a really helpful commentary. Well, elaboration on the commentary that you read. The one more thing that I want to ask about this is sort of what does Rabbi Yehuda have against reading the room? What is the reason that he says, no, you do have to name it explicitly? Why is that not enough for him?
Grace, if you have any thoughts off the bat.
People's memories of conversations and their impressions of what is going on in an interaction can be faulty, and people can disagree about what was actually being talked about and what the tone was. A business meeting, a committee meeting, a meeting with a lawyer or something, there are certain formalities that you go through that are they seem artificial. I think about like calling a meeting to order. It's like, do we really have to do this? Do we really have to say that we're putting this on the agenda? But it often matters. It matters whether did we take the proper measures to, take this out of casual conversation and into the realm of something that matters. And so that's where I could maybe see where Rabbi Yehuda might have been coming from here.
Nice. That there's
Yeah.
some situations where the like gravity of what you're doing and the potential impact that it has like makes it appropriate or even necessary to name things that you think might be obvious.
Yeah.
Because I mean on the one hand there's like the litigation of like maybe after the fact there's going to be a dispute and it's going to be really important that you protected yourself. Like in the case of getting divorced, it might be really important to name explicitly and have it be really clear, I'm divorcing you. And it's interesting to think of like Ma'aser Sheni on the same level as that. And there's also an aspect of like, I'm not just like, I'm thinking about like covering my ass, but also like in this moment, I want to make this special and just name explicitly something that like everybody knows is happening.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you're buying your lamb with your special set aside Ma'aser Sheni money, and you might just want to, like, you might say, like, wow, I am doing this.
Yeah.
Rabbi Yossi's position kind of requires you to pick up on social cues and context clues. Like, knowing that there are people for whom that's not going to function as clear, those are not clear signals. A social cue is not always a clear, intelligible signal to everyone, and like context clues are not always obvious what they mean. And there are plenty of people for whom you would actually just need to say explicitly, I'm buying this for Ma'aser Sheni, or I'm marrying you right now. Just like a level at which Rabbi Yehuda is being more inclusive by being stricter, more inclusive of like the spectrum of human psychology and neurocognition.
I love that. Wow. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. The other thing that's sort of this is reminding me of that it's not just about covering your ass. It's about this, like what we talked about at the beginning, right? Like this thing is for you to rejoice with your household. Like you got to do it right, but like you got to do it right for the purpose of joy and like revering the divine name.
We've been like really vibing with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion of like you have to say it explicitly, and what could that be about? I just want to note that Rav Ovadia Bartenura notes that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi in this case, meaning it's enough. The context clues are sufficient.
Oh, that really vibes with my last breakup.
Really?
Oh, just in, I mean, no, not in a bad way. Just in the sense of like, how explicit are you going to be about like dividing up the stuff you had together, especially if you didn't really have a formal agreement about, you know, whose stuff it was and what was going to be done with it if it didn't last. Oddly, I've never thought about Ketubot and Get in that context before, but so that's interesting that it goes with Rabbi Yossi.
I think like going with Rabbi Yossi, just to like extend the value beyond its context in this Mishnah to like the reality of what is being communicated non-verbally can sometimes get lost, and the significance of what is being communicated about my state of mind and my emotional like state non-verbally is just really like so important to keep in mind that that's something that's actually happening and that has real significance. And like Rabbi Yossi's opinion is not about that, but it holds that kind of thinking up as like significant enough that you could rest a whole marriage on it.
Wow. I think benefited greatly from this Mishnah.
That's I'd like to. Cool. Do you want to do one more?
I'd like to look at one more. Yeah, this Mishnah discusses a different issue, one where you are far from the produce that belongs to you, and the time for tithing is coming up. But and so here's the situation. Once it happened that Rabban Gamaliel and the elders were traveling by ship, and Rabban Gamaliel said, "The tithe which I shall measure out in the future is given to Joshua, and the place which it is in is leased to him. The other tithe which I shall measure out in the future is given to Akiva ben Yosef that he may hold it for the poor, and and the place which it is in is leased to him." Rabbi Joshua says, "The tithe taken from Teruma, which I shall measure out, is given to Elazar ben Azariah, and the place which it is in is leased to him, and they each receive rent one from another." So let's maybe go over that a little.
Yeah, can you unpack this?
I mean, so to be perfectly honest, the first thing that jumped out at me was the boat. But I think that it's another example of what do you have to say?
Yeah, and it even starts with the same language.
Yeah.
Misha hayu ferotav rechokim mimenu, someone whose fruits were far away from them. Tzarich likro lachem shem, you have to call them by name. You have to name them.
You've probably had, I certainly know that I have had plenty of instances where there's something you want to do and something that matters to you, but it doesn't happen because you weren't prepared. Like yesterday, I did not wake up early enough to make it to Shabbat morning service. And I think a lot of what I'm seeing in this Masechet is the idea that like, you shouldn't miss out on this for lack of preparation. Or for being in a situation where like logistically it's just not going to work.
We've thought this through. We got you. And like the flip side of we got you, we've thought this through is, and we expect you to do it.
Yeah, I like sort of high challenge, high support. Like,
challenge, high support. Yeah.
It's kind of Oh, go ahead.
No. It just makes me think of like the struggles of like accessing estrogen.
Oh yeah.
And like, I don't know. I had someone say to me once, like, you should have a backup plan. And if your backup plan for getting it falls through, you should have a plan for how you're going to make it through the time when you don't have it.
Yeah.
And that just makes it's obviously like not the same thing as Ma'aser Sheni, right. But just the way you were framing it just now was like, this is important. This is an important thing that matters for like communal life and your personal life. And insofar as like, this is about giving your soul what it wants, I think it fits. No, not yesterday. Friday.
I had work, and then like I had to call the pharmacy a couple of times to make sure that they got my progesterone, and then like I had to take an Uber over there to get there in time, and it was like on the way to Shabbos dinner. So like it was. I feel like I'm on a boat. This is reminding me. I had bottom surgery earlier this year, and huge merit for our people. It was a very meaningful. I had it at the last week of Shemot, going into the first week of Vayikra, so just from the construction of the tabernacle to like here's how you sacrifice and butcher animals. I felt like both of those. I had to go off my estrogen for 3 weeks beforehand. And that was, that sucked. Yeah, it really brought home to me. I'm thankfully in a place where, I'm not going to say that access to trans healthcare is safe, because it's sort of, we can never let our guard down. But we've got a real head start here, compared to other places, in terms of anybody sort of who wants to dismantle that access. But it really showed me like, in places where this is hard to access, here's what it feels like. But I think it's really cool that you brought two mishnayot that are about like, what does it mean to name things? Like when you exchange your Ma'aser Sheni money back into produce, there has to be an explicit act of naming or not. And like what's at stake in each of those, and like what kind of like nonverbal actions or contexts speak as loudly as words. And then when you're not actually able to like be there and do the thing directly, like how can a name take the place of that or be a step towards it? And I think that is like a first or early step for a lot of us. It was like, I'm changing my name. Yeah. And there's like I'm far away from like where I need to be to actually be like doing whatever it is we think we're doing when we're transitioning. But like changing a name is something that like I always have access to words and to names. If not always, then at least it's often closer to hand than like hormones and surgeries are, or whatever action, like exchanging your produce, setting aside produce. And there's like power that names and words have to like move us towards fulfillment, and like the ability to give our souls what they need, especially right now when so much is being taken away from us and when so many things are at stake, at risk, and dangerous for us to do with our bodies. I hope that at least
inside our community that we can preserve at least the sanctity of the names and the words, and help each other keep in mind that the goal of all of this is to give our souls what they're asking for.
Wow. Yes, that is beautiful. And I mean, I think the other resonance with this in a Jewish trans context is one's Hebrew name as well, right? Which feels very different to me. Right? And we're saying this, we're doing this for the uplift of Lea Yocheved, but Avraham.
Wow, Sophie, this was so good.
This
Thank you
was wonderful.
so much for bringing these texts, and I love that we started in the verses so that they could anchor us through the Mishna, and that's just the right way to do it. And I wish I had done that with my learning of Tamai. It would have been so much better. But
I learned a lot from your learning of Tamai. So
glad.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, and I hope this is not the last time we see you. I'd love to have you back for more.
I would love to be back. This has been wonderful.
If you're watching this and you're trans and Jewish, all that Sophie did to get on the channel was send me a message saying she was interested in learning, and I was like, you need to be on the channel. So it's very easy and it is not in the heavens, and it is not across the sea. You can be on D for Torah as well. Just reach out to me. I'm really excited to have all trans Jewish voices here learning Torah. Thank you all so much for watching.
All right. Thank you so much, Lexi.
Thanks, Sophie. Hope we can do this again.
הפכת מזוודי למחולי, פיתחת שקים תעזרני שמחה, למען יזמרך חבוא ולא ידום, אדוני אלוהי לעולמותיך, היה נה 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 נה